Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad that you're here tonight. Welcome to our fourth out of five total sessions in the Family Manners Transition Series to support transition aged youth and young adults with complex or extensive support needs. Tonight, we'll be focusing on real life transition stories. My name is Megan Best. I am a student at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, and also an intern with Family Matters. And I'll let my colleague Ricky introduce himself briefly as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ricky. I'm also a doc student at the University of Illinois with Megan, and I'm super excited to be here today to talk about everything transition.
Well, we're so excited you're here to share your expertise and your passion. Our session earlier today went really well, so we're excited to be able to share as well with you tonight. So the purpose of today is really to look at some awesome stories and talk about resources or strategies to helping transition-age youth with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities and achieving their post-secondary goals. So we'll be talking about and highlighting individual stories across employment, post-secondary education or training, as well as independent living. And then we'll talk about some different strategies that you can use with your loved ones or students or family members, whoever it might be that you're supporting, to help have these conversations. We do want to pause and highlight that the stories shared tonight are not necessarily our stories to share. So any stories that you do see, we have either asked for permission or we are advertising a publicly available companies' stories that have been published online. So we just do want to share that. And we encourage you to reach out to any of the organizations or links that we share about today. And we'll go ahead and get started. So my name again is Megan. I am a special education teacher by trade. I taught for 8 years as a high school special education teacher, supporting students with more significant or complex support needs. I also worked as a special ed administrator. My research interests surround the transition services of the transition plan and the instructional experiences that youth have, and really harnessing the voice of youth and self-determination and, really being, the captain of their ship, and a few other roles. But with that, I'll let Ricky go on and introduce himself because he has a lot more letters and experiences behind his name.
Don't diminish all the work that you do, Megan. You're great. I am also a student, like we were talking about the University of Illinois. I focus specifically on the transition from school to work for students with more extensive support needs. Before kind of coming to grad school, I or still am a board certified behavior analyst and a vocational counselor. So I really do everything work, and I focus really stingently on that. Some of my more direct research interest is looking at the assessments that are used to really help direct the plans for these individuals as they're developing their sense of identity in regards to career. And I'm also a sibling of someone with a disability. So that's kind of how I got into this world. And I'm super excited to be here with Megan to talk to you about all these amazing stories.
Thank you, Ricky. Again, welcome. With that, we'd love to know who you are. So if you are logged into the Pear Deck, I know not everyone loves logging into the Pear Deck, so I know some people aren't logged in. But if you are logged in, we'd love to hear what your role is. And you can go in and select if you are a family member, a self-advocate, an educator, a parent advocate, any of those roles, all the above. So you can feel free to do that if you'd like. School professional, other than an educator. Okay, so we have somebody here. This is great. So glad Ricky's here as well to share that expertise. Perfect. Again, you can always join with that link in the chat. And we'd love to ask next, where do you live in Illinois? So a lot of my experience in Illinois was in the Chicagoland and Chicago area. But now Ricky and I are both in the Champaign-Urbana area, coincidentally on the opposite sides of both cities from one another. And you can go ahead and share where you're at. You can drag the blue dot to share where you reside. And we're always excited to hear where people are coming from in the state because, collaborating and meeting one another and sharing resources is always exciting. And we'll keep on going. So we want you to pause and think for a moment. What do you hope to gain from today's session? If you want to share it in the Pear Deck, you can. Otherwise, just setting our purpose and intention that we'll be talking about those three main areas of transition, which are employment, post-secondary education, and or training and independent living. All right, so let's do it. Let's talk about employment. And Ricky's going to kick us off by talking about Illinois as an employment first state.
All right, so we thought this would be a great way to kind of make the basis for this conversation about employment, to share some of these stories, because this is a really great framework, systems change kind of initiative that is coming from top down, that states are adopting. So employment first is essentially that the first option for people with disabilities, the government says, should be having these individuals to find real jobs in the community that they reside in, and getting real livable wages. So Illinois specifically, because that's where we are, is by state law, has the executive order to be an employment first state. So that means that the professionals that are working with individuals with intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, you name it, should be preparing them and providing the resources to them and their families, trainings, facilitating dialogues, things of that nature, to be able to integrate individuals into the society to have these paid positions for all Illinois citizens. Now, employment first, I'm going to actually put it into the chat. I actually just found this. I should have done it for the first one, but is this kind of systems change that is coming from top down to really support more specifically students with more significant disabilities, but it is impactful of individuals of all disabilities. And so not every single state has fully adopted kind of what Illinois has, of like a legislation saying like, we're employment first. That is what we're focusing on first. So you can kind of see here, and if you wanted to go to this map on your own, you can scroll over the different states and click the orange button to kind of give you more detail about what is happening in those states. And there's a key on the right hand side as well that will kind of tell you if there is that directive or executive order that they have through the legislation, if there's just legislation about the employment first, if they just got like a directive and a kind of executive order and they need to kind of take the next steps, or if there's other or no activity currently. And so luckily we're living in a state where we have the legislation saying like, all right, employment first, and we're working on those goals. So we thought that would be a good kind of basis before kind of getting into a lot of these stories, because a lot of the resources that we're going to be talking about specific to kind of a lot of the different areas of transition relate to work or can relate to work. And this is something you can come to as a professional, really understanding this to help with the people that we're providing services to.
I love that. Thank you for sharing this resource. I think that is just so wonderful and really helps kind of show where every state is in this process, with hopes that everyone eventually, is that resounding yes, we're all doing it together. We're all employment first.
Right.
Perfect.
So the first business that we want to highlight, this is a personal connection that I have out in Pennsylvania. It's called Bakeability. So this was started by a couple of moms who have children with disabilities, going through that transition process in high school and trying to figure out like, all right, like what is going to happen for my child? So they kind of band together, like, let's start a small business so that we can provide them this work-based learning experience. They can work on these skills. They can interact in the community and provide a service as well. So they created a bakery, which is great and awesome. And what's really cool about this, and what we'll highlight too, and there's a video that will highlight this, that will show, is that it's fully integrated into their community that they are in. So not only are people from the community that maybe don't interact with people with disabilities on a daily basis or ever are now coming to this employment establishment to get their baked goods, to get coffee, and interacting with these individuals, which might be starting to shape these attitudes of what we might think of people with disabilities working in a more positive way, but also the businesses around the area are seeing how Bakeability is flourishing, how they're meeting a need within their community, how they're creating a community within where they reside, and they're being very impactful. And these other businesses are reaching out to Bakeability and they're saying, hey, can you help train us or help educate us on how we can also hire people with disabilities and employ them. And it's breaking down some of those barriers that we see for the employment for people with disabilities, which are more attitudinal, more societal. It's not that these individuals can't learn how to run a bakery. Obviously they can. It's the fact that maybe society hasn't fully accepted or understand that these individuals, just like anybody else, can be hard workers and deserve to have a job. So really cool how it kind of has that community impact. And the start of this conversation that we're going to have with a couple of other highlights for some of these other jobs of entrepreneurship and what that specifically looks like for individual. And yeah, on the website, as kind of Megan is going through, they definitely have their story that you can check out, tons of pictures. And if you're in the area, go check them out. I don't think that they do kind of baked shipping to like other states right now. I could be wrong though. I know that they're constantly growing and expanding, which is awesome. And then I think there's a video on the front page
Looking
that
for it. I don't know if I
you
missed
can
it.
check out. I know, or was it last time? Here, I can see if I can find it as well. It was
Oh, here it is. It this threw me off right here. So we're gonna watch a little bit to hear about the employees themselves.
These are blue stones, and these are all pizzas.
Bakeability began with other moms and myself who are parents to children with special needs. Our children go through a different kind of school experience where they're in school from the age of 3 until the age of 21. And then after 21, instead of going to college or something like that, we look for some sort of employment for them. And that's very difficult. One of my moms, Denise, her son Dane, this was his very, very first job. And she said when she showed him that his paycheck had been deposited, she's like, look, this is what you did. She's like, he's nonverbal. His smile went from ear to ear because that's all these kids want. That's all these kids want. It's for meaningful employment to feel like they're making a difference and contributing. And that's why we're here. And unfortunately for children like mine and my mom's here, it's hard because not everybody understands that these employees are loyal. They are hardworking. They will give any job their all, and they just want to do something where they feel accomplished at the end of the day. And we're very fortunate that this is the kind of place where we can give them that opportunity.
I like to hand the baked goods to the customers, and I like to taste all the baked goods.
It's a very good job. And I like working with my mom.
I just love that, the employees here that are being able to be productive and reaching out. I think the community itself needs to partner up as much as possible and all work together.
Have a delicious day.
Such a great video. It's so great to hear from the employees, the customers. I think it's just a wonderful experience. And I think that it's so cool that they're investing in other businesses and companies that also want to be more inclusive in their hiring and their support of individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, it's really cool that they highlight that too in their, they specifically highlight that in their video, that it's having that community impact. And I think with a lot of these stories that we'll talk about, it's not only benefiting the individual, which it should be, but how are we changing society's views of employment for people with disabilities, which is only just going to progress kind of the positive support for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not sure, I know we had someone mention they're a school professional, not a special education teacher, just thinking through like the different ways that some of those community relationships can be fostered, whether it's through community-based experiences or
Mhm.
internships or paid employment while in school. You can never start too early, and we'll continue to emphasize that. Here's a few. I do not know them personally, but they are featured online, and they all kind of have like a different thread or strand to it that is exciting to celebrate, but also good to see other stories. So the first is called Blake's Snow Shack. So in 2015, Blake went ahead and decided he wanted to create his own business and make these, snow cones with tons and tons of different flavors. By the way, I wish I lived in Texas so that I could go here because it looks so good. Yes, so this business is in the food industry. Sorry, my camera continues to freeze. But this didn't just lead to an opportunity for employment. This continued to expand, and Blake has just continued to evolve in his advocacy and his work and involvement with legislation. So he has worked to support access to minimum wage for disabled workers, being able to do equal pay, and helping just throughout the state in supporting individuals with disabilities in employment. And I also wanted to share that he has also developed his own, let me see if I can find it. There he is. Changing the world. He has started his own scholarship fund to support other individuals with disabilities that are interested in starting their own companies, business, etc. So it really has come full circle, and that he worked hard developing and launching this business, and then that continued to snowball, as they say, and moved into more advocacy work as a self-advocate and in policy work, and now also investing in fellow entrepreneurs. So I think that is pretty cool and pretty exciting. This next one is called Bradley's Blocks, and it's it's in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and it's all on Etsy. So I think that this is a really great example of harnessing technology and really thinking creatively about where work can be done and how it can be done. And so Bradley is really talented as an artist, but really talented when it comes to pets and providing art related to your pet. I showed my husband this site and he's like, oh, I wonder if he could do, we should put it in order for our dog Wyatt. These are everything. But all that to say, I think that this is so exciting because this really not only speaks to the different like formats or ways in which we can work, but also tying our interests and our preferences into the work that we do. There's a lot of jobs that I would not want to do because I don't think I would be good at it, or it's not motivating to me, but I really enjoy being a special education teacher. And I think finding things that bring you joy and satisfaction and accomplishment in your work are just so important. And so when we do all these different conversations and assessments, as youth are in high school, in transitioning, maybe middle school, thinking creatively about what could be, what type of employment or opportunities could be aligned based on interests, and just being really, creative with it. So it's just really great to see this example through Etsy, which I know everyone loves a lot of people love to shop on Etsy. So if you're interested in supporting Bradley's Blocks at all, I'll go ahead and drop the chat or the link in the chat. Did you have anything you wanted to add or highlight from these two stories, Ricky?
I think just and you kind of touched upon it already, with the Etsy platform, is that like a lot of these stories we'll see, they look very different per the family, and that could be again very different based upon some of the privileges that you might have or might not have, and not everybody might have the capital to have a brick and mortar kind of site. And so it's cool that, especially now in this day and age, that there are so many unique ways to start a business. And it can be fully remote or all online, which would not cost a lot of money. Because I know that is definitely something that is on when I've spoken to like some families and talked about this before, that's on people's minds of when starting a business, like how do you get the money to do it? Something like Etsy is very simple and low
Yeah.
cost.
Totally. And you can really control like your order volume as well and kind of keep it open or closed based on that. So thank you
Exactly.
for sharing all that. Those are really great points. Some additional entrepreneurs. The first one here is a food truck. Another one in Texas. I believe this is in Austin. But this is the Fry Guy. And the owner has Down syndrome, and they have catering, and it's specifically to fries. So like this really niche, delicious market to be in, honestly. I think I would be interested in this one because I love eating fries. But all that to say is, they have this, but also he expanded his business not only to be food, but also creating these different teas or different clothing items that, you know, connect to his business and branding, but then he also has specific teas that are related to Down syndrome apparel. So, you know, expanding and continuing to think about different ways to like launch his brand and also maybe his practice. He looks like he could be modeling as well. You know, I don't know him particularly, but all that to say, this is another great one. And this is another example of not a brick and mortar kind of space, because I believe this is a food truck. And so, which are also all the rage. So that's a fun one. And then this is titled, this is a man named Patrick, and his company is called Purely Patrick. And he is in Vermont, and he creates pre-packaged food that is dry ingredients in jars that then you can add in the wet ingredients, and they ship all over the place, and he sells it at farmers markets in his parents' store. Patrick has cerebral palsy and uses augmentative and alternative communication. So we're going to watch a short video. If it pops up, we'll see if it's there to share this. I do want to note in this video, it's a news article, it's a news report, and there is a statement about suffering from cerebral palsy, and we just want to call out that is very ableist language. And so I think the rest of the video is wonderful to see the alternative forms of communication and the ways in which he can interact. So I just wanted to point that out as we get started.
Well, starting a business can be a big gamble.
But a 19-year-old is winning with his made in Vermont goods and is beating the odds too. Gina Bullard has his story.
You're talkative today. Keep it going, my man.
Patrick Lewis has a gift.
That is how it all started, because he did that hand movement, and I thought, what can we do with that hand movement and capitalize on that?
The teenager suffers from cerebral palsy after being born almost 4 months premature. But as his mom, Marianne Lewis, tells us, that doesn't hold him back.
So he doesn't have any vision at all. But he does a lot of exploration with his hands. He also had some brain damage from his prematurity. And so he uses kind of sounds and songs to communicate.
His business, Purely Patrick, capitalizes on what he can do.
Barley. Split peas. Rice.
With a voice output and pouring device, the 19-year-old creates ready-to-make jar mixes. Like a kit, you just add the wet ingredients to Patrick's jars. From dinner to dessert, he can do it.
This one is sequential, so you can put like the list of ingredients. Like that.
This one is his favorite, country soup, because it's the loudest to make. Singing as he works in his room. Just like the rest of us, he doesn't always feel like working.
Are we boring you?
Sometimes you can do like 4 jars in the morning. Sometimes you just one. We're kind of into like let him take his own time, and he wants to work quickly, that's good. If he doesn't, it's really bad.
Do you think he has fun doing this?
I think I like it. Do you like it? I think he does enjoy it.
Patrick's jars range in price from $5 to $10, which he sells at his family's business, the Brass Lantern Inn in Stowe.
I don't think Patrick really worries about how much he sells. I think he has just more fun in the process, right, bud?
Patrick also loves going to local farmers markets, meeting the community, and marketing his business.
I'm not sure that he's going to retire rich with this business, but I think it's enough to give him like a meaningful purpose and enjoyment. That's what I'm hoping.
Vermont products made purely with purpose. Gina Bullard, Channel 3 News, Stowe.
All right. So I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed seeing how Patrick utilized and harnessed technology to support the work that he was doing in his job. I think that what do we say? That, our creativity and innovation is the only thing stopping these opportunities at times. The more we continue to collaborate and brainstorm and think through, the more that we can continue to be innovative and come up with ideas like Patrick and his family do, that support him in his work and in his business.
I think no, this is a good transition into the next one too, because I feel like it kind of goes along the same lines. But I think that video really touches upon too, that like you were saying, Megan, with these like interests and preferences that like we have and how they can turn into businesses, that like seeing this transition to employment, almost like reshaping what we think of as work for really all individuals, but specifically those with disabilities, that it's not a job, but it's a career, and we should be focusing on what that looks like and how you can develop a career and what that means in wanting to progress in your field. And like you have this interest, and so maybe you start kind of small with like building products, but then like what is the future goals that you have of this career? And rather than just being like, oh, I'm gonna have this job, which there's nothing wrong with it, but it's kind of just this ending point, versus like how can we develop this sense of career for an individual that can really flourish and have this sense of purpose. So that kind of goes into the Basketeers, the 3 Basketeers. Don't have a personal connection to this one either, but have definitely sent a lot of their baskets to people before, and they're actually having a sale for Valentine's Day if you're but it's 3 individuals with autism that, as they were graduating high school with their parents and their vocational coaches, they worked with their vocational coaches to develop this business based upon their interests, and that really drew attention to the strengths that they each individually had. And so these are not only customizable baskets that you can get, but there are various types of gift baskets. There are grief baskets as well that you can send to people. Happy birthday ones, just fur baby baskets, like that's definitely new. They have a lot more baskets than the last time I checked. So this is really cool. And again, another one of those online kind of more at home, self-employed kind of business aspect. That is a really cool story to do, that kind of ships out nationwide and whatnot. And so kind of, I think taking all of these stories kind of together, it's really like, I hope it broadens this idea of like what a career could look like for an individual with a disability. And yeah, there is a lot of maybe beginning work that goes into making a lot of these businesses and to putting them up front, but maybe that is something that we can start in school, and that we can focus on this idea of what entrepreneurship is versus just trying to get someone a job and kind of stopping there.
Absolutely. Great points. I think that's such a great business. I'll be ordering some baskets. I also want to share that there is a unique opportunity that I think perhaps we've both discovered, since kind of leaning into this world of also doing research, but there are opportunities, and there continues to be highlighting an emphasis on, research teams supporting and researching any strategies, interventions, experiences of individuals with disabilities. having them be a part of the research team to give insight and thought. It's really important that we are learning and collaborating alongside individuals with disabilities, specifically those with intellectual and or developmental disabilities. And there really is just such a great opportunity moving forward. And I hope we start to see it happen more frequently. I do want to share that this article from the Harvard Law that talks about self-advocates in research. Again, nothing about us without us, and what that looks like within research. It's a newer frontier, but I think it's been needed for a long, long time. And also thinking about opportunities for collaboration. I know in our department, we're fostering, a new collaboration with a local vocational program in supporting some of the work that's being done. And it's really turning into a great opportunity. I just got an email from the teacher this afternoon or this evening about how production looks maybe a little slower than anticipated, but the skill is just, the students are really enjoying the activities and really thriving in it. So I made sure to communicate our great appreciation for that. So did want to highlight that as well. We'd love to turn it over to you. If you have any ideas, questions, stories you've heard, you can feel free to put it into the Q&A portion of Zoom, or you can enter it into the Pear Deck if you would like. We're always wanting to learn and hear from you because you're doing such great work. And again, such innovative ideas come through collaboration. That's all right. We'll keep on moving. And next, it is already 7:03. This time goes so quickly. We're going to talk about post-secondary education and training. So this is another area that is a transition goal tied to transition services received for transitioning youth with disabilities. And so we're going to go ahead and first talk about Think College. So Ricky did such a great job talking about this earlier today. I'm going to just toss it back over.
Thank you. I'm sure the video definitely helps as well, which we'll play in a minute. But Think College is a institute that was created out of the University of Massachusetts, Boston, to really focus on, like Megan was saying, this path of transition to post-secondary education, be it college certificates, college degrees, or training programs. Like a lot of people go into various trade opportunities kind of to get into what their career would look like. There's also a connection with post-secondary and independent living, especially if you're living in a college dorm or your the residence halls and whatnot. So there is a lot of connection that education and training and this kind of other path of transition really branches into these two other areas of independent employment. But so basically what Think College is, it's a hub of a bunch of resources that has literally everything on it, from fact sheets, from research that is constantly being done across universities, information about various grants across the United States, the projects that they're doing, a platform for students and families to either figure out what they want to do in college, to kind of figure out what their interests are in college and why they would want to go get a post-secondary education degree. I think there's a podcast and a blog that's associated with this. So a lot of technical assistance, not only for families and students, but also professionals as well. This is a great resource, especially for educators and other service providers who are working with students with disabilities and their families, to provide that resource of, hey, this is another option. I remember when I was, this is usually typical unless things have changed, that guidance counselors and stuff help people in high school to figure out, hey, this is where you should go to college, or let's figure out how to pay for college and the FAFSA and all of that stuff. And there's not a ton of those resources or that done for individuals with disabilities and their families. Because sometimes that is maybe not seen as an option. And so this is a great resource because they do provide that training and education on how to pay for college, how to figure out what types of colleges in your state you want to go to or out of state. And that's something that we'll touch upon in a minute too, is they have a really nice map to kind of give you an idea of what post-secondary education programs and colleges are in your state that you can access. The video definitely does a little bit more of a succinct job at explaining it than I just did.
It's great to pair it together. So let's go ahead and take a quick peek. I think that's such a great little video. Ricky and I were chatting about that earlier, but this really is like a great starting point for families if they're wanting to explore this option for young adults with intellectual disabilities that are wanting to explore a program. And as Ricky mentioned, we're going to share this really great resource they have. There's actually 316 post-secondary education programs for students with intellectual disabilities. I don't know if that number is what you expected, if it's higher or lower than what you thought, but we do want to share that Illinois is doing a great job with 16. Is it 16, 19? More
16.
than that? 16, yes,
Yep,
16. So you can see that some states have no programs that might be available to adults with intellectual disabilities. Some have 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9, but we have 16. So if you're interested in learning more about it, there's a ton of information, but you can go ahead and just select the state. So we'll pick Illinois, and then you can go through and they share if federal financial aid is an option for their program, giving more, sharing more information about the program itself, what kind of experience it is. Is it more, functional skills based? Is it taking college courses? Is it a 2-year program, a 4-year program? Are there internships built into it? Really looking through, and they are all throughout the state. I want to share on page 2, there is a newer program that's been started at UIC, University of Illinois, Chicago, in Chicago. And this is a 2-year, I think it can actually be longer, but a certificate program. And I'll go ahead and share this. But there's certain classes that are required. There's specific specializations within studies. So you can see specific required courses. So also really promoting self-advocacy and learning about disability policy inclusion. And then their focus areas right now are on arts and culture, social justice, policy and leadership, health and care across the lifespan. And I believe they are hoping to expand for something related to sports. I think there's been a lot of interest in that, whether it's broadcasting, journalism, things like that. But this is just an example. So we wanted to share that we think that is such a great resource and tool. Ricky, do you want to share anything about this?
Not necessarily, no. I think you covered really everything and kind of highlighting. I think it's cool to see that. And again, we're in a state that's we're privileged that we have a lot of colleges that are tapped into kind of doing these programs, which is really nice. Because it gives a lot more options for families, especially so that maybe the only option is not 6 hours away. And so if this is maybe one of the first times that their child is going off to college, if they are going to stay there, that is definitely something to consider. Or if it is something that is in their backyard that you can drive to and back and from. And the variety of options as well, such as like right here, Morton College, Skills for Daily Living. So it's really these, you're going to get out what you need and want from it. And so if it's looking for a certificate program or a college degree or looking to further your progression into employment, or if it's just focusing on living and independent living, and those basic like skills that you need for that. So it's cool that there's all different types and you get that college experience.
Totally. Thank you for sharing that. If you're wanting to share a story with others, here's just, I don't have a personal connection to her, but her name is Jean, and she goes through and shares about her experience going to the University of Minnesota, what her major and degree was in, her college experiences, all these different ideas about or responses that young adults might have in pertaining to like, what is it? Why do you have to get a book if you're going to go a textbook for college? How do you pay for it? How do you, when you left, how did you feel? What was your experience like? So this is just a great article to share with others. And I also want to share, I'm so sorry I forgot to mention it, but we will talk about it, but we have Family Matters has a self-advocacy blog titled Self Advocacy Rocks. And we have a writer consultant. Her name is Bridget, and she interviews different self-advocates in Illinois each month. And she is also a student at the co-op program at UIC. And she shares about her experience and what that's been like in doing internships and different things like that. So we'll make sure to share that too at the end. Okay, into our final branch of independent living, which encompasses a lot of different things. We'll go ahead and start by just talking, perhaps Ricky, if you want to give us that overview again, like you do so well.
Thank you, Megan. So independent living, again, that kind of last branch, which is very important too. And we were already saying that there's a lot of interconnections with this, but really focusing on that long-term individuals are able to do things on their own. And independent living doesn't mean that they're going to be living in their own apartment or their own house, or condo or what name it, by themselves or with roommates, but maybe they're living in a group home with support staff, or maybe they're still living at home with their parents, extended family, siblings, but they're able to maybe work on some of the skills to be more independent so they don't have to rely on other people. Again, all pending on the individual and the supports that they might need. So there are some resources, as Megan is showing right now on the screen, through DHS in Illinois, that talk about these community integrated living arrangements, CILAs, for individuals with intellectual disabilities. All over the state, that have been created, and there's many different types of them, whether they be group homes, whether they be like apartment complexes for people with disabilities and people without disabilities. And so this is a really great resource to share with families as well. To be able to kind of tap into a lot of these things, because and we've mentioned this too earlier with employment and post-secondary education and training, and now independent living, but this is something that obviously we should be supporting at the age of 18, or even 16 to 14 to 16 when it's mandated by law. But it's things that we need to maybe address earlier on, especially because, as I'm sure we all know, some of the wait lists for either these groups or for waivers and the services are so long, unfortunately, and we have a lot more work to kind of provide these supports, but starting earlier is just going to better support individuals, especially to, this is also a tough conversation maybe to have with families sometimes, of that long-term planning. And so families are not, or caregivers, parents are not always maybe going to outlive their children, even as much as they want to. And so planning for that long-term success for their children is would be in their best interest, even as hard of a conversation that is. But there are supports, as we're showing, and resources to help do that. Yeah, do you want to, is there anything else you want to add, Megan?
Yeah, and just that when planning for like independent living, just to highlight like the individualization of it and understanding that like each family kind of has their own, might be guided and directed by, you know, cultural norms, different cultural norms, experiences. And so what might look, while one family might really want to pursue a SILA, another might believe that we're all together and our family is going to continue to, be together under the same roof. And so I think it's important to keep those considerations in mind, as well as having the conversations earlier, enable families to get on the puns list earlier. Right now, typically, they're trying to pull, it used to be that young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities that would qualify for this wouldn't be pulled until much later, late 20s, early 30s, but now they are starting to get pulled earlier in the that mid 20s range. They did make some improvements since I was teaching, but also I just want to share too, finally, these SILAs, each family again is different and unique. And I had a few parents of students that also went on to develop and do their own SILAs. And then they had their child who had roommates there and lived there. So that's another, path that could be gone down. And then finally, just like all the different resources that can also come with it that can be of such a support to those individuals. And then Ricky, do you want to share about the Sibling Leadership Network?
Yeah, so this is also a great resource, not just for independent living, but it really fit nicely in here. But for families in their unit that there are siblings of those with the disability. There's a lot that obviously parents have to go through. Raising a child with a disability, what they have to plan for, what they have to think about. But there is also a lot that potentially is put onto the sibling as well. And so this is a resource specifically for the sibling without a disability, how the conversations that they should be having with their parents, the things that they maybe should be thinking about, and questions too for families that they should be maybe talking with their siblings about as well, such as if the parents are the main caretakers of an individual with a disability, well, is the sibling going to be taking on maybe that responsibility? And it's not just a given, but it's those conversations that should be had. Again, very tough conversations and stuff, and it's there's a lot of cool, more fun things on this website as well. But it's a great resource to give families, again, just to kind of have things to think about and be involved in, and another source of community for what a family might look like.
And we also have lots of other different ideas and activities here, and we're happy to share resources. We are nearing time, so we are going to wrap up for this evening. Thank you so much for coming. If you have any questions, you can feel free to let Ricky or I know. And with that, we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Anything you want to share, Ricky?
No, thank you so much. And hopefully there was something away that you could take away and support the people that you're supporting.
Love it. Can't wait to hear all the success stories to come.